Good evening and welcome to Hall Monitor. I'm Denise Clay Murray here with Larry McGlynn, co-hosting tonight. And we have with us Rebecca Reinhardt, the controller for the city of Philadelphia, otherwise known as the person that tells you where your money is going and whether or not it's making the most sense. Thanks a lot for joining us today.
Oh, it's great to be here.
Well, I guess my first question, because one of the things that I've been following is the $155 million that the city put in the budget regarding gun violence and the chunk that was supposed to go to community organizations. I saw a recent report that talked about how this plan does not appear to be going the way that the city told us it was going to be going when they started doing community grants. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So my office, starting last year, looked at the 155 million that you just mentioned in anti-violence budgeted funding that the mayor's budget had included in it. And what we found over a year ago was that out of the 155 million, very little of it, only about 21%, was going to what is called intervention work, but that is the type of anti-violence work that has an impact within 1 to 3 years. So intervention work is, by leading experts in anti-violence, considered to be what stops the bloodshed now. Then there's additional types of anti-violence programming that's by leading experts put into the buckets of prevention and transformation. So prevention and transformation are good programs. They're after school programs, they're economic development, they're good, but they're not going to stop the shooting right now, which is what we need here to be funded at an appropriate level. That's the intervention work. So that was over a year ago. Now, fast forward to now, but recently my office looked at the 200 or so million that the mayor budgeted for anti-violence work this year. The mayor and city council's approved budget. And what we found was very similar to last year. The very little of it, only 17% this year, is going to these intervention strategies. And by intervention strategies, they're very specific work to focus on the people most likely to shoot or be shot, looking at it as a public health issue, and having intervention with those individuals to pull them out of that life of violence and to have them drop the guns. If they don't drop the guns, then there are consequences. But what has been found across the country, in Oakland, in New Orleans, Chicago, New York, LA, is that these programs are so successful and they decrease homicide rates dramatically, and are expected to have results within 1 year. So I say all that because the lack of focus on these intervention programs is very problematic. And then the second thing is that there isn't, right now from the mayor's administration, there isn't program evaluation, at least any that's been disclosed to the public, to say, is this funding working? Is this spending working to get at this violence that we're seeing right now?
Now, if only 21 and 17% of that money is going into intervention, where is the rest of it going?
So it's going towards these to programs that are categorized as prevention and transformation. So it's everything from, after school programs to just increasing the budgets, for example, of Parks and Rec and Library to make up for a portion of their pandemic related cuts. The mayor's administration put that into this pot. of money. There's a lot in this pot of money that, and I say pot of money, but in this 155 million last year, 200 million this year, that isn't specifically focused on stopping the violence right now. It could be good to fund. I've been a big proponent of having library service go to 6 day a week, having after school programming. And in fact, I worked with Councilmember Gautier last year to demand from the mayor to focus on the 14 zip codes out of about 40 zip codes in our city that are most impacted by violence, and increase library hours, increase rec center programming. But that has to be done at the same time as the intervention work. But the intervention work is what works to get the violence down immediately. It needs to be funded at much higher levels.
Now, what I found most fascinating about the report is the fact that as part of the grants that were supposed to go to community groups, so that they could expand and scale up programs, one of the things that was supposed to be a part of that was they were supposed to have someone who was there that they could talk to about how to use this large pot of money that they were just given in a way that is the most effective and efficient. And apparently that's not happening. So I guess, what are you seeing from these community groups that are being handed, in some cases, $50,000 to $100,000 with no idea of how they're supposed to use it the most efficiently?
Well, the way the process was supposed to work was to have some rigor around what the groups were doing with the money and the outcomes that were anticipated. I think that some of the groups just got the money, even though it was budgeted a long time ago. But there's been many problems associated with the city's management of those community organization grants. And I think that community groups are important in getting money and programming into people's hands and homes, right, that need help. But at the same time, there needs to be program evaluation. So the city should be looking at, okay, how is this money spent? How well was that spent? What were the outcomes? How many people were reached? Did it reduce gun violence in the way in which that group said they were going to? So I think that type of program evaluation is what does not appear to be occurring across the board with the anti-violence spending that the city's making. And there's just a lack of transparency around it. I mean, my office put a request in back in May to the Office of Violence Prevention for information around the spending, the community groups given money, and also just the broader anti-violence spending. The community groups are one small subset of that, but there's hundreds of millions of dollars that's being spent, and there's no measurement of that. And the thing is that the gun violence is devastating our city right now, and there are solutions. I mean, this is fixable, and that's what we've seen in other cities across the country. And New York City and LA, for example, fund intervention work at about $24,000 to $26,000 per shooting, while Philadelphia only funds it at $6,000 per shooting. So we need, as a city, to fully fund the strategies that work and then measure how they're working, because experts in the field, there's a Harvard researcher, Thomas Apt, who says that if these intervention programs, if done right, at the end of year one, will reduce the homicide rate by 10%. So that's what other cities have seen. So we need to be on a different track, and it's just devastating what's happening right now.
I didn't realize we actually spent so little per shooting regarding intervention and different things to try to stop this, because you would think that as much as we talk about it,
right,
that we were spending a lot more money. And it's just really kind of odd to hear that we're not.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things we need to do as a city, and I've been vocal on this, is that we need to put the care into the programs and the strategies that work. And that includes funding them appropriately, as well as making sure that they're working as they intend to. And I'm the fiscal watchdog. And here I am saying we actually need to fund these things more. And the reason we need to fund them more at higher levels is because that's how you get them to work, to fund them appropriately. They're not, and then to administer them appropriately. These programs, the strategies of reaching out to the specific individuals that are most at risk of gun violence and saying there's a high probability that you're either going to get shot or shoot someone in the next year. And we want to offer you a way out of this lifestyle. And it's done through a life coach model where someone with the same lived experience is their life coach. And it offers them a way out opportunity. They're coupled with talk therapy. Chicago's Becoming a Man program has been tremendously successful. So I say all this that we need to be smart about how we're spending, and smart sometimes means more. And this is something that we need to fund more, and do it right, and stop just saying, oh, we increased it by a few million. What we need to do is fund it right for the level of the crisis that the city is facing. And right now we have money. The city of Philadelphia has a lot of money. And I don't say that lightly, but there's the American Rescue Plan money that Biden and Congress approved that has given the city 1.4 billion extra that to be utilized. So there is funding right now. We have to be strategic in how it's used.
Okay, now, has council or the mayor's office seen this report? And if so, what kind of response have you gotten to it?
Yeah, so the council and the mayor's office has seen the report and the analysis. Some council members are very supportive of this. And I think from the mayor's administration, I haven't heard much from it, unfortunately.
Wow. So let me just ask like a question that kind of looks ahead a little bit.
Sure.
The person who becomes the next mayor will probably have access to these reports and different things that, you know, that your office has done regarding gun violence and stuff, because it's sure to be a lead issue on the campaign trail.
Yeah.
Have any of the people who are currently running reached out to you? And if you had advice for the next mayor on what to do with this problem, what would it be?
Well, I think that the intervention strategies are key, that we need to fund and implement the intervention strategies that work. We need to invest in our communities. And there is also a component around getting the illegal guns off the streets.
Okay. Well, thank you. And I'm going to turn it over now to Larry McGlynn, my co-host for here on Hall Monitor, and you're listening to Hall Monitor on WPPM.
Thanks.
Thank you, Denise. And thank you, Controller Reinhardt, for being with us.
Sure.
I'd like to shift gears a little bit to something we've been hearing about since May, property assessments. And in 2019, your office found that the assessments in the poorer areas of the city had the least accurate assessments. And that hasn't really changed since then. Do you have any insight as to why we're still having these problems?
That is a very good question. And back in 2019, my office did analysis around the accuracy of the city's property assessments. And we found exactly what you just mentioned, Larry, that the mayor's administration has said historically that the assessments meet accuracy standards citywide. But what we found was that when you look at it by geographic zone, by neighborhood, that the poorest areas of our city are paying more than their fair share. So that areas of Northwest, Southwest Philadelphia are they are overassessed compared to sales value, which is not fair and not right. And so in 2019, when my office found this and we put it out there, my feeling was at the time, well, of course they're going to fix this. This is unfair. This is unjust. And it's likely based in decades and decades of racist history in the city and country, and it must be fixed. But we didn't hear anything around it. And then with this new assessment coming out this past year, we looked at it again and it's still the same issue. So property tax, the assessments went up over 30%, but the underlying issue, the underlying inequity was not fixed. And it's completely not right. And it should be, and it can be, it must be. The status quo is maddening, actually, on this.
It really sort of boggles the mind. Do you have any insight, or your office have any insight into the methodology behind the assessments?
Well, there's not as much transparency as there should be with the assessments, and that's an issue that they've made. The Office of Property Assessment has made some improvement on transparency, but nowhere near enough in terms of the methodology. And it's really unclear what they're fully doing, honestly. And this is not acceptable and should be fixed. There's sort of the continuation of the status quo seems to be accepted, which shouldn't be and needs to be disrupted.
So without having the I guess, proprietary information about how they do the assessments, in your opinion, is there a better way to do this that makes it more equitable for people? And is a more reliable way to handle this?
Well, the Office of Property Assessment should be looking at accuracy by geographic zone. And there's measures that are used called uniformity, regressivity. It gets pretty technical, but they should be looking at each geographic zone, each neighborhood in the city, and saying, okay, we're not meeting standards here. What do we need to do to fix this? There should be an action plan with each area to make them more accurate. It seems that that's just not happening. So that's what should happen, because what we shouldn't see is what we have now, which is that North, South, West, and West Philadelphia are paying more than their fair share. And my office has seen this type of inequity in a lot of service delivery, which I mean, I know this isn't what we're talking about today, but my office looked at on-time trash collection, for example, and found that before the pandemic, in the years leading up to the pandemic, the on-time trash collection rate was over 90% in Center City, Philadelphia, and Northeast Philadelphia, while only 65 to 75% in West, North, and South Philly. So this type of inequity, like here we are overtaxing residents in Northwest and Southwest from property taxes and under delivering in service delivery, such as trash collection. That's based on, again, racist policies. And to me, that needs to be changed right away. that needs to be immediately fixed.
Right, because the only key differences there are income and skin
Mhm.
color. Like that's what we're talking about, and we hear that too. And it's like you said, it's with a lot of things, not even talking about the schools. I mean, there's so many different things there. So that kind of leads to the next thing. And this is general because this isn't necessarily your office's purview, but in a way, is there anything the city can be doing to be more efficient in the way it handles not just the issues we've talked about, but different things that create inequity and poverty in general?
Well, I think that there's so much more that the city could be doing to create more equitable service delivery and create opportunity. I mean, this starts with, with each service delivery and saying, okay, where are the inequities? We just talked about trash collection and property and assessments for property taxes. We should be looking at each service and saying, okay, why did these neighborhoods not get the same service delivery? Illegal dumping, for example, and cleaning up and enforcing on illegal dumping. Everyone deserves to have clean streets. And so, and education, we haven't touched upon education being a huge inequity. So I think what we need is city leadership, a mayor's office that says, this isn't acceptable. We're going to completely transform this so that we are fully taking care of every resident.
All right, I'd like to turn it over to Denise Clay Murray here on Hall Monitor.
Thank you, Controller Reinhardt, for taking the time to talk to us.
Oh,
Is there any new reports that you all are working on right now that folks might want to keep an eye out on? And also, where can people get a copy of the reports that we just mentioned?
sure. So the reports are all on my office's website at controller.phila.gov, and that's controller.phila.gov. And in terms of upcoming reports, we do have an audit of the police department coming out in the next few weeks. So what we've looked at there is was originally a request from city council members to do for my office to do a deep dive into how police spends over $750 million a year. How is that money utilized? And this is the audit of that. And it is coming out soon. And I think that's one that will be very important.
Okay, we'll have to have you back on when that's released.
Absolutely.
One final question, and it's a question that we've been asking everybody, because, whether we like it or not, the 2023 mayor's race has, for all intents and purposes, started. What are you looking for in the next mayor?
I think someone with the experience to lead and the compassion and empathy to be the leader the city needs. The city is in such a critical moment right now. The problems are solvable. Absolutely, they're solvable. But Philly needs a leader that cares, an experienced city leader that can fix things and that cares deeply about everyone in our city.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. And like I said, we'll have to have you back on when the police audit is done.
Wonderful. Thanks so much. I really appreciate the conversation. Thanks.